my mission, you might say, is to tell people what I know about anti-gravity electromagnetic propulsion systems. I was in the Air Force for 21 years, and that's where I run into electromagnetic propulsion systems. You think that's something new? The Germans had electromagnetic propulsion systems during World War II. They knew they existed in 1932 because they had some. And they had the people that had built them. And they learned from them how to build electromagnetic propulsion systems. They recovered 2 ships in Brazil with crews aboard, took them to Germany, and their science started working on them right away. This is no secret. You can go to the Library of Congress and look this up. You can buy books that will tell you what I'm telling you now. And if you are interested in that, you take the time, you can go research, and I'll mention some books later and some people that maybe you've already discovered in your own research. There's a lot of other things happening with your government that they don't tell you, that they're going to have to reveal to you pretty soon, because they've lost control over the nations that they did control through petroleum. One nation is China. One thing your government fears more than anything else is to march 6 billion people in any direction. We learned that in Korea. The Chinese did not ride to Korea in trucks, they marched. Just like in World War II, they moved their factories and their machinery and everything to the mountains to get away from the Japanese, put them all back together and successfully sustain themselves throughout the war. One thing China can do now that it never could do before, that's feed itself. Give whoever you want to credit, but communism brought something to China that no other regime ever did. And that was they were able to feed their own people. And they can feed their people now. So what force do we have to bear against China? None. So that's the reason our government fears China more than they fear any other government. And China don't listen to us. And China don't run on petroleum. They don't need it. They can feed 6 billion people without any internal combustion engine, then that's something the rest of the world hasn't been able to do. We're willing to let, in certain parts of the world, millions of people to die. This is your government policy now. We will accept millions of deaths through starvation. And we won't do no more than is just necessary to keep our position in the world. Now that's all right for the rest of the world now, okay? The light has gone out over Africa. We no longer care about Africa. You will not see any troops, our troops, going to Africa except just for show. We will not go over there and start feeding anybody or showing them how to feed themselves. You'll see that policy come to the public attention before the first of the next century. But you can even look at it today. We go in with a little show of force, just enough to get the world, try to satisfy our people and the people here in this country that, you know, are conscious of the fact that we should do something. And then when that is, so as soon as we kill somebody, we're ready to come home. So we did our part. People still starve. Now, Harold and Pat, Paul, and a lot of you, the groups you belong to and everything, know a lot more about that than I do. What I'm going to tell you about is some personal experiences. When I was in the Air Force in 1950, I was stationed at Warner Robins Air Force Base. We were there on a secret mission. We were from the Eglin Air Force Base, Air Proving Ground Command in Florida. I don't know if you know it, but Eglin Air Force Base has the largest climatic hangar in the world. Anything that comes out new for the military is tested there. They can simulate any kind of conditions in the desert, the Arctic, North Pole, South Pole, whatever. Drop the temperature, lower the temperature, raise the temperature. Blizzard conditions can be simulated in that hangar. I was working on a top secret project that in World War II was called identification, friend or foe. Later on, it come up to security identification feature. Now it's a Mode 6 transponder that is in every aircraft that flies, you know, the skies in the United States and most of the world. This genius that invented this thing worked for 12 years. I worked with him for about 3 years. And in working with him, when we was running the acceptance test for the Air Force on the equipment he was inventing for the Air Force, he would tell me other projects that he was working on. Well, sometimes I'd ask him questions, well, you don't have a need to know, I can't tell you that, that's top secret. But after a while, he would start telling me things, and I guess he grew to trust me. And then he began to tell me about other projects the Air Force was working on. The Air Force knew that after we'd worked together for a couple of years that he had told me this. They figured it. So they called me in and said, has he ever mentioned this and this to you? I said, yes. And they said, well, how would you like to work on some of the projects? I said, okay. So and that started a series of examinations into every feature of my life, my history, and everything else, by medical doctors, psychiatrists, and theologians, and professors of psychiatry, and so forth. So I guess I was accepted along with a few other guys, and we started working on some projects. Mainly, the one I was on was the development, the capture of, the investigation of anti-gravity electromagnetic propulsion systems. Most of you know that as UFOs, but they're not unidentified. They've been identified for over 50 years. And the beings that was on them became, after a while, until about 1953, when General Eisenhower met with them, and everything friendly. But they didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't. Just ask yourself that. Why are they here? That would be the most important thing that your government would want to know. That's what they tried to find out. This is an advanced civilization, 4 of them. They come from different places. Maybe you've seen the little grays or pictures of little grays on the thing. Those people are life carriers. They go to a universe and bring life to it. They're responsible for it. They tend, you might say, the Garden of Eden until Homo sapiens came on the frontier. They maintained it up through the animal kingdom. They brought life to the sea, just like it says in the Bible. Okay? And they brought the first Homo erectus to this planet through changing the DNA codes of the evolutionary characters that they had caused to be seeded and raised on this planet, just like they did to a race of people on Mars thousands and thousands of years ago. And on other planets in other solar systems within our universe, which this universe in which we're in, which is out on the Andromeda galaxy, way out on the, not too important really. The place in which they come from, the grays come from, in the constellation of Orion, it's the center star of the belt. And the planet that they come from, the solar system they come from, around that star is Tayeti Yeti. This is not hard to find. You can go to the Library of Congress and look that up. And it's been published in several books. They flew a vehicle that would be influenced by our radar in the early days, in the early 40s when we was first inventing radar. And we come to find out that we could interfere with their propulsion systems if they were slow and if they were low. And they got real interesting in what we was doing at White Sands. So we moved a lot of our high power radar into that area. We concentrated on them, and we caused 2 of them in 1947 to run together. You know that as the Roswell incident. One of them blew up in the air, and all the beings aboard were destroyed. One of them went down, and there were 4 of them aboard. 2 of them were still alive when the Air Force got there. The Army got there, the Army Air Force of those days. One of them died shortly before they could get him anywhere. The other one remained alive for 3 years. We kept him out here in Los Alamos laboratories for those 3 years. There was a doctor, a medical doctor in the military that took care of him those days. At first, we could not confine him. He could just go through the walls. So we had to build a Faraday cage, electromagnetic cage around the building that we held him in. After that, when we could confine him, he began to tell us truth. We think it was the truth. Okay, prior to that, he could tell what the question was, and he already had the answer. He could tell what answer we wanted to hear, and he'd tell us the answer. So until we confined him, we didn't begin to really make any progress of finding out what they were here for and where they were from. When he died, and we don't know why, it was just maybe some that affected his system, which his system was different. They turn everything into liquid, and they don't have a digestive system like we do. And they do not reproduce. They're created, they're one of the light beings that's created for a certain purpose, and sometimes you can destroy them. We can destroy them. We have did that purposely, and sometimes accidentally. They really do not need bodies if they're traveling through space or they're traveling through time. But to manipulate things in a solar system in which they go to, they take on the molecules of that solar system and they make them a body that they can use and manipulate. The body is of no use to them when they leave here. They leave it behind, or it just dematerializes. They are the workers. The ones that are about 5'5", you've heard this, blonde, pale, so on and so forth, that kind of look like a blonde person that's been in the sun too long. Their skin is like it's exposed to the sun too long and it's kind of reddish. And they come from a different place. And they seem to be in charge, or at least the Greys refer to them for certain decisions, but their missions are separate. And sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they don't. Only when their missions cross do they cooperate. Each have robots, okay? These are not light beings, they're manufactured beings that they can send into dangerous places that they could not withstand, either for their makeup or the bodies they've adapted with while they're here. And these robotic beings, surprisingly, you go back 25 years in Star Wars, which there's been a purpose behind Star Wars. If you will think, or if you're a Star Wars fan or a Trekkie, you go back, you'll see how many amazing things that was first portrayed on Star Wars that we have nowadays. So we have robotic, almost like a Mr. Dana, okay, that our government uses. You know that. You go into a place, somebody's holed up or in war, you don't want to lose any more lives, you just send one of these robots in. See, they fly the airplanes like the Pumpkin Seed, the latest black project. It goes 18 times the speed of sound. There's nobody aboard that. There's a robot flying it, a robotic that we have built that flies it. Nobody could stand the G-forces because that is not an anti-gravity vehicle, okay? Now, if you have an anti-gravity vehicle, you have no G-factor when you're pulling G's, okay? But that airplane, the SR-75 and the Roar, they are not anti-magnetic driven vehicles. The Black Manta is. It's a triangular shaped vehicle, and it has electromagnetic anti-gravity engines in it. The Air Force flies those out of Kirtland They fly them out of Sector 51 and out of the secret base in Puerto Rico and out of a joint use base with Mexico and the United States and the aliens out of Sonora, down on just opposite the Baja Peninsula. Now, my first encounter was when we was running radar missions against, we thought it was against SAC, penetration missions. That's when we had old gap filler radars strung all across the United States, the DEW line, and so forth. Actually, what we were running missions against, or it was UFOs. This was 1950, 51, 53. We was at Warner Robins Air Force Base, temporary duty. We moved the most powerful radar that the government had at that time down there, 2 sets, a search and a height finder. And one day, there was 5 of us on the tower, and I had 7 men. 5 of us was on the tower working, and somebody says, "Look, flying saucers." So we turned around. There's these 3 shining objects sitting out there about a mile, flat on bottom, round on top, luminous shining. That was the Project Blue Book days. Okay, the astrophysicist in charge of investigating that and debunking all these sightings was H.J. Heineke, which later became a friend of mine. He was a technical advisor on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, paid by the government. The government has paid every one of the Spielberg movies that he has made. They have guaranteed if you lose any money on this, we will pay your losses. So far, he hasn't lost any money. So we haven't had to put any money out of the Federal Reserve pocket. There's a new one coming out pretty soon, 3 or 4 months, the Roswell incident. Now, it's supposed to be the closest to the truth of what happened down there in 1947 than any they've shown before. They made him the same guarantee. Heineke won't be directing that one as a scientific director because he's dead. But I advise you, if you're interested in it, go see that movie. There's a couple of personal friends of mine that are going to be portrayed in that movie, and I've talked to them. I said, I want to see if you're a nut, you know, if you're going to be, are you a delusion, or you're discredited, you know, Air Force pilot, or what? I want to see how they portray you. Now, they are too, they're interested. But they have interviewed them. So we'll see how much they really put in the movie. When we saw these 3 things, if you're familiar with Warner Robins, they would thin about 9,000 GIs and probably about 20,000 civilians that worked on that base. So we were looking at them. We said, well, now what's Heineke going to say about this? And he said, well, it's swamp gas or it's mass hypnosis, all those suggestions, so on and so forth. That's his standard answer. So, okay, none of that paint's on the radar. So let's go down, turn on the radar, and see if this is going to paint. So we go down, turn on the radar, and we end up building with French doors all the way along one side, so we could open all the doors and see these 3 ships sitting out there. And we was painting them on the radar. So it's okay, turn on the cameras, take the radar pictures, go outside and take the pictures like we're supposed to do. So we did that. They started moving. Now that time, the radar rotated 4 times per minute. And when they started moving, they moved out horizontally for a while and went up, and they was off the scope within 4 revolutions. At that time, we deemed that to be about 3,300 miles per hour. We had nothing in the Air Force inventory that would go that fast at that time. We had nothing in the inventory that would set still and hover like that either. So then we say, all right, we're going to report this. And we decided, well, we're not going to report this. You know, you're going to be sent over to psychiatrists. Why you weren't out of the Air Force? And then they keep badgering you, you know, until you say you didn't see nothing and so forth. That was the usual procedure. Or you was threatened if you kept saying you saw something. So we said, you know, all these civilians and all these military, somebody else has seen this. So we're going to see what comes out in the paper. Sure enough, the next day there was hundreds of people that seen these things sitting there and seen them move off. So they call for Heineke, and it comes out, Project Blue Book, in the local paper about 3 months later. Yeah, it was swamp gas, auto-suggestion, mass hypnosis. And we're sitting there, none of that paint's on radar. So then I got interested in seeing what else the Air Force knew in other reports. Well, I was a Conrad courier that carried the war codes that are sent out by the president. If you ever watch the president, there's a warrant officer by his side all the time. He has the launch codes to all the nuclear vehicles. And it's passed down through the Air Force to men. They're always in control of those codes, and you're armed and you're sworn to shoot the other one if he's going to compromise codes. So I had a top cryptographic top secret clearance. So I'd go in the center and I'd watch all these messages come in of all incidents where these UFOs were sighted. And I got to learning, hey, there's a lot of this going on. And then other people that had the same type of clearance, I'd begin to discuss, this with them. And about that time when I'd learned this is when the Air Force decided he knows more than he should know. So we either take care of him or we bring him in on the project. And that's when they offered me the opportunity to go to work on secret projects as far as anti-gravity electromagnetic vehicles. So for years my job was, like Heineke was as a civilian, mine was as a military investigator, to debunk anybody that had any kind of incident or sighting or so on and so forth. My job was to go see them, convince them this did not happen, so on and so forth. If I couldn't do that, and members of my team couldn't do that, then we turned it over to other people. Their job was to coerce, threaten, or eliminate people that they could not control. Do you want to know what they said? I don't know what it is. You, for your own individual conscience and mind, will have to come to that conclusion. But what they said was that they had been coming here for thousands of years since the beginning. And that they do this when things need changing. They don't come to save anybody. They're not going to load us up, take us off anywhere, anything. But when we begin to destroy so many other type beings, there are beings here that we don't see, we don't know. Sometimes we catch a glimpse or we catch a feeling, okay? But we have now, since nuclear weapons have come into being, destroyed some of these beings, just like we destroyed some of the beings that we do see, like the carrier pigeons and the buffalo and other creatures that we have eliminated from this sphere. Okay? So when we get so bad and we're destroying these beings, what makes you unique, this is the most important thing, is you are a rare being because you have free will. Now, that was the greatest gift given to this project. And this is just one of billions and billions and billions of projects, as Carl Sagan would say. But you, in this solar system and in this universe, are unique because you have free will. Other beings don't. Even like your Bible says, angels desire to know what men know. Angels do not have free will. They work within the prescribed limits that God set up. He tried that one time. He tried to give them free will. And what did they do? About a third of them rebelled. Not only did they rebel, but they led a lot of other creatures into rebellion. And we still suffer from that today. This is a unique universe in the sense of our little part of it, the only one that rebellion ever took place. Maybe because, as far as they say, we're the only one that has free will. Now, if you're a creature that has free will, then sometimes you can become a God within yourself. You have that choice. okay? But you upset the scheme of things. Now, they are Homo sapiens today that exist in this world and has, that they don't want you to have free will. This is the main thing of why they've come back now, is to let it be known that they are Homo sapiens, that's your generation, your type of creature, that do not want you to have a free choice anymore. This country was set up unique in the history of Homo sapiens. At the time, there was nowhere on earth that you could have or express free will. We had kings and princes, or churches and religions that dominated your free will. The red man of the 7 races on this planet had been given this Garden of Eden for 20,000 years. And they took care of it. They did not kill everything that they could get their hands on. They preserved it. Of all the 7 races of this planet, the red man kept one thought better than any other race. And that was one God, God in all, and all in God. And when the white man came, he began to destroy this Garden of Eden, just like he had destroyed the Garden of Edens that they had created other places in the world. With manna from heaven. You know what that was? The buffalo. Everything he needed was in the buffalo. And he used the buffalo to move him all over this continent. And now he's leaving, like there are other beings leaving, like the porpoise is leaving, the elephant is leaving. The porpoise no longer can run free in the oceans. We've polluted them, we've killed them, so on and so forth. So they're volunteering to leave. You hear mass suicide. They just don't breed like they used to. Elephants are leaving. Their habitat are being known. Besides you, of all existing creatures that you might say are flesh and blood, you know, the porpoise and the elephant is the next 2 most intelligent beings on our little planet. They're leaving. What about us? It took 500,000 years, so they say, for Homo erectus to evolve and reach his highest state. Then the DNA codes was adjusted. It took him 500 years to disappear. When I give this lecture at the college, I used to say, but I think I saw 1 or 2 down the hall. It took 500,000 years for Homo sapiens to develop to where we're at today. It will not take 500,000 years for Homo sapiens to disappear. Time is short. And they come to change the DNA codes again and to bring a new creature. Before this year ends, you will have some great theologian, some great scientist, or some great physicist tell you that there is another race of beings here today. About 16 to 18 years old, they've been coming about 20% of the children that are born in the world today are Homo, you can write this down, Homo blank, or you can say it's Homo sapiens. Now that's 2 different qualities. The difference between Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens is that the rapiens, you might say, are more the sons of God than Homo sapiens are. It's a rebirth of the time that when the sons of God saw the daughters of men and saw that there were commonly that came into them and giants was born in the land, and then men lived to be 900, 600, 700 years old. That's taken place again. You can get a book called Abductions. I think it's Ted Mack or Edmac, who is a medical doctor that uses hypnosis to progress people back to the time that they first had a contact with an alien and so on and so forth, and they got impregnated, or they took, you know, the eggs from her, or so on and so forth. All of that now is not every case. That's not true. A lot of people, they want to write a book about this. So, but I want to tell you, your government can do the same thing. Your government, the CIA, and other intelligence agents can convince you that you've been seduced by an alien and you're pregnant and you're going to have a child, okay? They're masters at doing it. We learned how to do that in Korea. We learned from the Chinese, okay, and brainwashing. It's very simple now. You don't have to do anything. You go get shots. We get more shots than any country in the world. All you have to do is have the right thing put in by any doctor, especially in the military. You got to go all the time. Oh, we're going to get a tetanus shot. Well, maybe it's not a tetanus shot. And maybe you go to your civilian doctor. Well, you know, I'm depressed. You know, I need a shot. Well, maybe you get what you think you're getting, and maybe you don't. In the future, you probably won't get what you think you're getting. Okay? Now, if you read that book, write that down, because it's going to explain a lot of this for you. It's abductions, okay, by either Ed Mack or Ted Mack, an MD. I forget how many, 500 or something cases he's investigated and regressed these women that had, you know, an encounter with an alien. And in all cases, he has found that the women, after a while, maybe not at first, but after a while, they volunteered to do this. And some of them, most of them, will come to love the creature that they brought into the world. Maybe they brought it here, maybe it didn't. All they needed was the embryo to experiment on. They took it sometimes after 3 days, okay, sometimes later. Now, why? Why would these people want to do this? I'm going to tell you a little story, okay, that was given to us in one of their conferences, okay, and it's been passed down ever since. There were some light beings that came down to study this earth and the beings that existed here. And they found one type of being that stayed in one place all its life. And it took what it needed from the earth, it took what it needed from the air and from the sun, and as it would progress and grow and everything, other things would come and take what they needed to exist from that being. And then when the being died, it became part of the ecosystem, and it regenerated itself, and it regenerated other things that depended on it. That being became part of this world and learned how to exist and became part of its ecosystem. Then they found another being. Now this being could move. It moved all over the world it found itself in. And it learned how to survive. But even when it died, it became food or something else for other beings. Just like when it lived, it used other beings for its existence and for its shelter, or for its substance to exist. There was another type being. Now, this type moved, but it killed everything. It took it and it killed it not to exist. It never became part of the ecosystem, but it just destroyed for the sake of destroying. And it eliminated some of the other beings totally from the face of the earth. So when the light beings went back and they reported to the life givers, they said something should be done. They said this third type being, he hadn't learned how to exist in his environment. He has not become part of the ecosystem, and he destroys everything he gets his hands on. fact of it is, he may be an alien to that world. So they went before the Ancient of Days and said, well, we suggest you get rid of the third person. But the Ancient of Days, they thanked him for the report and said, well, we'll study this matter. So they did. Later they came back, they told the light beings, well, we could destroy it. But we've decided that we will take on some of their characterization, and we will pass on to them some of our characterization. And we'll create a new being. We'll raise this being to a higher level. Now, what are we going to take from it? What would be a new experience for us? We will take some of his emotion, because light beings do not know, the grays do not, neither do the neophyte. They do not know hate, jealousy, or fear. But in the same way, they do not know love, compassion, and pity. So that's why and what they tell us that they're here for. To bring a new race of being to this planet. That's not new. You think that's new? That's not new. In the Hopi religion, in the year of 2873, the pale blonde one came and taught the shaman, the priest of the Hopi tribe, these same things. And if you read a book on the Hopi religion, you'll find that there. If you read the Rantha book, you will find it there. If you read the ancient Indo upslates, you will find it there. So it is not a new concept. It's not nothing new. Now I want you to ask yourself, what I've told you so far, is it going to make any difference in your life tomorrow? Now, Harold, Paul, Pat, they can tell you things about your government, but you better wake up, and you better change, and get interested in changing your life tomorrow. Now the SS, they went all the way back to Nebuchadnezzar and got the Maltese cross with a circle in the middle, and that's the symbol of the black sun. When they started building their anti-gravity, electromagnetic propulsion systems, that symbol was on the early ones they built, the Honeydew 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, they used to fly through the formations during World War II, and we'd see them as light because the sun was shining off of them and so forth. If they flew close enough to the bombers, they would kill the engines. Now, they tried to put some guns on it, but you don't get guns to work on electromagnetic propulsion system. So they was never successful doing it. They even created an electromagnetic propulsion system for the cannon they tried to put on it. It didn't work. Because if it's going to move electrically, the electromagnetic engine is going to stop everything. That's the reason the lights go on. That's the reason the cars stop. That's the reason the engines on the aircraft stop. Because when you get close to electromagnetic engine, everything electromagnetic stops. The flow of electricity stops. Okay? So, when we used to chase them, if the fighters got close enough to them, or they came close enough to the fighters, the engine would quit. Maybe they would crash, and finally couldn't get it restarted. So we lost a lot of people chasing them. So we learned not to do that. Okay? Took us a while, but they finally learned us, don't go chasing them. Now, I'll tell you a simple way to tell whether this vehicle you see is electromagnetic or if we have built it. Okay, and at first when the Germans started trying to build one, they would use they used 12 Volkswagens. engines. Well, that wasn't too successful. Okay? Then they tried rockets. Then they tried jet engines. That wasn't too. We tried that. It wasn't too successful. Okay? Now we had some electro geniuses that was working on electromagnetic engines. So at the same time the Germans was trying to develop, you know, engines like these craft that they had recovered. Well, if you study, you can find out Townsend, Brown, Telstor, men like that, and Meyer, Meyer family became multimillionaires in secret because they couldn't say what he was developing. But we got a lot of his laboratory stuff, writings, and so forth. So we were working on that. The Russians was working on that. Germans, they was a little ahead of us on that. You know that we went in and got all the rocket science, von Braun, so on and so forth. We had another project where we sent the men in to get the engineers on these electromagnetic vehicles. We kept that secret for over 40 years. You know, the Mexican government, because their Mayan priest had known this and incorporated, and they helped them. That's why they scratched out all those symbols on the Ascar plains, why Peru was able to build all those huge monoliths around the world, is because these people had helped them do that. And they gave them the grid system and so forth, and electromagnetic systems of the earth, and they had showed them where the null points were, and so on and so forth.